So now we're going to look at how do we defeat a virus that's maybe hiding inside of a cell. So when we have a cell here, this is called the cell-mediated response. So here we have a pathogen hiding inside of a cell, maybe a virus. Now this virus is replicating inside of this cell. So here there's something special called a major histocompatibility complex, or an MHC. Now this is a class 1 MHC molecule. Now MHC molecules are going to take an antigen from whatever is multiplying inside of this cell. So here this MHC molecule, class 1, is actually bringing a piece of that virus to the surface of the cell as kind of like a signal or a warning, saying, hey, look what's happening inside of here. Look what's reproducing inside of me. Now, the class 1 MHC is going to display foreign antigens that are made within the cell. So now this is going to then attract a cytotoxic T cell, or a killer T cell. So once the cytotoxic T cell is activated by cytokines, the cytotoxic T cell, you can kind of visualize maybe if this was like a signaling molecule and you have a G protein right here, and then you have your signal transduction pathway. Then the final cell response would be to turn on genes that would then code for the production of proteins. Now these proteins are called perforin, and these proteins are actually going to go and put holes in the cell, in the infected cell. So it's going to perforate or put holes in the infected cell that's going to actually result in the death of this virus-infected cell. The cell will actually go through cell lysis. You have a bunch of holes created, and the cell will eventually die. So the virus can no longer multiply. Now then you'll have your immune system, your white blood cells, come and clean up any parts of the virus or of the cell that result because of this. So here's a picture of cell lysis just to give you a pretty picture of what I was trying to do. So here again, a virus infects a cell, and then the cell has a class 1 MHC molecule that's going to present on its surface antigens from the virus, and then that will attract cytotoxic T cells that will then go and signal the death of this cell. So another type of MHC molecule is called a class 2 MHC molecule. And here in this class 2 MHC molecule, you have a macrophage or a dendritic cell that's going to engulf a bacteria or a microbe, and it's going to destroy it. And as it destroys it, a class 2 MHC molecule is going to take a piece of this antigen and present it on its surface. So here this cell becomes what you call an antigen presenting cell. This cell here is an antigen presenting cell because it's presenting a piece of the antigen on its surface. Now this would be a macrophage, maybe engulfing a virus or a bacteria that is a pathogen of some sort that's traveling in the body fluids. So this macrophage could be living in a lymphocyte, a lymph node, or maybe your spleen. And so it engulfs it and it brings this antigen to its surface. Now this is going to attract helper T cells. But I should mention class 2 MHC molecules, they present antigens from foreign materials that have been internalized because of endocytosis. So class 1 presented antigens that were made within or inside of the cell, whereas these are presenting antigens that were brought in by endocytosis. So anyway, this antigen presenting cell is going to present the antigen on its surface, activating helper T cells. So now this helper T cell, its role in all of this is the helper T cell, once it's activated by a macrophage that's become an antigen presenting cell, the helper T cell is actually going to travel over near your B cells, and it's going to send out cytokines that are going to actually activate your B cell, and that will stimulate the humoral response or clonal selection. Now the cell will start to divide. So let's really think about this. The helper T cell releases chemicals or signals to the B cell. This would be equivalent to like a local regulator or a ligand, activating a signal transduction pathway that then results as a final cell response to B cell division. Now you have mitosis. Now you have your clones being made that will then create your standing army of memory cells as well as your plasma cells to send out the antibodies to defeat the pathogen. So remember, over here, the macrophage engulfed the pathogen, the invader, activated the helper T cell, which then turned on the clonal selection process to create plasma cells that will then go and defeat it. Now, here's a picture from your textbook. So you have your antigen-presenting cell. Your macrophage is going to engulf the bacterium. Here you have your class 2 MHC molecule that presents it on its surface. It activates a helper T cell, which then is going to activate that B cell by releasing cytokines. And now that B cell will then go through clonal selection and start to divide into plasma cells that release the antibodies, as well as memory B cells that remember this invader. So here's just another repetitive thing. So when we look at the cell-mediated response and how the helper T cell is involved there, again you have your macrophage. It's going to engulf a foreign invader inside of your body. This antigen-presenting cell now secretes or presents that antigen on its surface, which activates a helper T cell. Helper T cells also activate cytotoxic T cells, killer T cells, having them also result in the death of the infected cell. Okay, so really when we look at both the humoral and the cell-mediated responses, helper T cells are involved in both. So here you have your humoral response, deals with B cells and identifying a B cell out of your 1 million that matches your pathogen. It also deals with, you also have your cell-mediated response. Now helper T cells are going to be involved in activating both. So here, this cell is actually, B cell is activated by helper T cells. And then once the helper T cells release cytokines, it activates the B cell to then divide into memory cells as well as plasma cells. Then you have your helper T cells also going to secrete cytokines to activate your cytotoxic T cell or your killer T cell. And then your killer T cell will then destroy your virus-infected cell. And that's our immune system.